What's up, Zox fam? We're back with some more Etheria Restart. Now, we're going to be getting into a character overview of the scoundrel Asshu. Now, this is one of the lowest rarity characters in the game that actually has tremendous value. And when we are actually jumping into what this character is able to do, looking at the skill 1, the Piercing Barrage, Asshu attacks a single enemy with his nail gun, dealing 3 hits of 70% damage with a 15% chance of each hit inflicting a 2 turn of speed down. For every 10 speed Asshu has, it increases this skill's damage multiplier by 2.5%. So, with that being the case, there's already 2 indicators here that's going to be very important. This character obviously needs speed, not just for the aspect of rotating and taking more advantage of the speed down that he's inflicting from the skill 1, but it's also going to be further increasing the multiplier that this character has in terms of the initial damage that will be coming from this ability. Then when we get into the skill 2, the Thorny Volley, Asshu sweeps all enemies with his nail gun, dealing 220% damage with a 75% chance to inflict 1 stack of 3 turn dot. Now, this does kind of seem like it could be out of the way, but this is actually what makes him such a great unit to alternate in as a sub dotter, which is kind of a unique thing to say, but yeah, I guess it does exist in this game. And so with that being the case, he's also able to be useful in the sense of AoE dotting, and that could actually be really nice for early game, even into mid game, and even in some cases late game AoE wave clearing. So with that, you also have his skill 3, where Asshu rains bullets down on all enemies with his nail gun, dealing 260% damage with a 60% chance to inflict a turn of silence. And this is where we start to see his value really open up. Not only is he able to dot, but he does something similar to Obel, where he basically can stun and, for example, then make you eat the dot damage that he's putting on you. It's kind of the same thing. He's silencing you, forcing you to only be able to use your skill 1, which means more than likely it's not your most impactful ability. And then on top of that, you then have to deal with the fact that there's now these dots on you that you have to now deal with. So there's a lot of different things that actually gives him a ton of value as a debuffer. And so that's really a lot to pack into, in my opinion, in a rare unit. Now, as far as module recommendations, speed is an absolute must for this character. So Swift Rush on a 12 matrix bonus, which is going to be giving you a speed value increase of 35%, is going to be required. Now, when we're looking at some other options or alternatives, you can definitely utilize things like the Onslaught set for early game, which is going to be giving you a 45% attack increase on a 12 matrix bonus. You could definitely consider ones like the Momentum set, which is going to give you a crit rate of 12%. And then when attacking for each debuff or control effect on the target, damage is increased by 6% and up to a maximum of 30%. Now, when we start looking at some of the in-game options, definitely Swift Smite with the speed increase of 15% and then the effect accuracy of 20% so that you can have a better chance of landing your debuffs. Now, when we're looking at the main stats and substats that you want to aim for, I would highly suggest you aiming for things like effect accuracy, HP bonus, and crit rate. Now, to explain the HP bonus, characters that are typically at lower rarities have lower HP thresholds than obviously their predecessing characters in their SR or even SSR rarities. So you do need to make up for some of that lacking of bulk or survivability. So HP is actually a really good choice since most of your damage is typically going to be coming from the wear down of the DOT that you're able to apply. Now, from there, you're also going to need crit rate, which I think is just a good way for you to make it to where each of your hits are actually scaling or doubling in the damage. And then, of course, having effect accuracy is just going to further increase your chances of landing your dots and also making sure that you're landing your silences and really, honestly, the speed down, which is really ultimately the entire gimmick and what role Asshu plays. Now, as far as substats, what you would want are things like effect accuracy. You definitely would want speed 100%. Crit rate is definitely a good one. You can also go for things like HP or even effect res if you want to build into trying to prevent any debuffs from coming onto Asshu. Now, as far as skill prioritization, definitely starting out with the skill 2. In the first node, you'll be getting an increased damage multiplier to 200%. The second node will increase the chances of inflicting dot to 75%. Then with the third node, it'll increase damage multiplier to 220%. And then the last node will increase dot duration to 3 turns. Then moving on, second would be the third skill, which will actually, in the first node, increase damage multiplier to 240%. The second node will increase the chance of silence to 60%. The third node will increase further the damage multiplier to 260%. And then the final node here will reduce the skill cooldown by 1 turn. And then lastly, we have the skill 1, where you're going to be able to increase the damage multiplier to 70%. In the second node, it increases the chances of speed down to 15%. Third node, for every 10 points of speed, it increases the damage multiplier by 2.5%. And then lastly, it will increase the speed duration or the speed down duration to 2 turns. Now, as far as shell recommendations, starting out in the Shadow Runner, you're going to have the Unbridled Science. So after the owner takes action, it increases the strike prep by 30%. Then from there, you're going to have Kururu, where Kururu is going to give you ones like Star. So before the owner takes action, reduces the next skill cooldown by 1 turn. Then from there, you can move into Phoebian, who's going to have ones like Black Flag. So after the owner takes action, follows up on the main target and deals 120% damage, applying a 2 turn of speed up on the owner Animus and increasing the strike prep by 20%. And then from there, we're also going to shift into Whitney, who's going to have the Shenhai Jing. So for every 3 turns accumulated by enemy units, increases the owner's strike prep by 20% and can be triggered up to 1 time per turn. From there, you're also going to then have in Nikonata, ones like Gigabyte. So for every 3 actions accumulated by enemy units, increases the owner's strike prep by 30% and can be triggered up to 1 time per turn. You can also throw in ones that do dispel debuffs, so Alicorn or even the Mermaid Princess. So before the owner takes action, if the owner has debuffs, dispels 2 debuffs, and for every 1 debuff dispelled, recovers 8% max HP. And then, of course, lastly, shifting into Astarte, I would definitely say the Codex of Magic is going to be the best in slot, where this will make it to where before the owner acts, unleashes the owner Animus' full potential, making their next skill cost no cooldown. Now, as far as our infamous pros and cons, starting out with the pros, I would definitely say some of the big takeaways is that you can really apply a ton of shutting down with Asshu. Not only is he able to AoE silence, but you also have the AoE dot application. This is actually the 2 biggest things that I feel like he's able to add value with in conjunction to other characters. So say you're using dot-oriented teams, whether it be with an Obel or a Shadow Sania. This is a unit that could add a ton of extra value to them. Now, when we actually start looking at cons, it does get a little bit on the kind of bad side, just simply because it's one of the things that most dot damage dealers and debuffers typically have to deal with. If their form of debuffing is not applicable to a specific boss, then they just don't work. So if he can't silence and he can't land dots, then yeah, he's pretty useless. But other than that, I'll also say the other thing that's kind of against him is he's also a rare unit. And rare units do typically tend to have lower base stat values. So you do have to kind of find out a way to make up for those values so that you can have the character be somewhat more competent in the content that you might be trying to bring him into. And Asshu, unfortunately, is faced with this. So these are just some things to think about. So with all of that being said, that's basically going to be that on the Scoundrel Asshu. I hope that this was able to give you a little bit of a better understanding of how this Animus works and maybe how you can apply him to your composition. So with that being said, let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, guys, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.